When your weaving is complete, you will then have to take the weave off the loom and secure the weft and warp ends. Flip your cardboard loom onto the back and then gently remove the tape from the ends at the edge. Lay the ends flat out on either side. Cut along the middle of the warp strings. Gently lay both sides of the cut warp strings flat, then lift the loom off of your weaving. If using a wooden frame loom, the process is slightly different. The warp strings on this frame loom will only run along the front, they will not be wound around the back. Instead, gently cut the warp strings close to the outer edge on the front. This will leave a length of warp strings on either side of the weaving, which is what you need to tie off to complete the weave. You can simply lift the other side off of the loom. This will cause the loops to remain intact on one side. You could keep these loops to insert a stick or a rod to make a wall hanging. If you would prefer to tie off the warp ends, cut the ends off of the loops so that you're left with individual strands. Notice here that the white weft is starting to unravel from the weaving as it's not yet secure. To secure the weaving, group off warp strings in twos and start to gently tie double knots for each two strings. Try not to tie the knots too tightly as it will distort the weaving and make it very tight. Move on to the next two and gently tie double knots like before. Continue gently tying double knots of two warp strings all the way along to secure the weave. The weave is now secure on this side and has some long fringing from the warp. Flip the weave around to begin knotting on the other side. You could group in fours instead to make the knotting quicker. This will result in bulkier knots but will secure your weave. Continue knotting all the way across. The weave is now secured by the warp strings so the weft will not unravel. You can now decide whether you would like to keep the fringing long or cut them shorter. If cutting shorter, make sure not to cut too close to the knots or else they could come loose. You can keep the edges like this, or you could sew in the edges. If you would prefer to darn in your warp ends, take the needle and go under a few weft threads. Thread up the needle before you push it the whole way through. Pull the warp threads through and cut off the remaining tail. Repeat this step for all of the warp threads. For the weft, do the same as before with the warp ends, double knot each pair of weft tails. Again, you can simply just cut off the weft tails after they have been knotted, don't cut too close to the knot. If you would prefer to darn the weft ends in, put the needle under a few warp threads and pull the weft through. The tail can now be cut off. This step is what you would do with any single weft tails you have that are unable to be double knotted with another weft tail. You will now have a secured and completed weaving. Make sure to knot or darn in all weft and warp tails after trying out different weave sample tutorials.